Hey everyone, and welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We're here live at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia at the Sportsbook, our home on Tuesdays. This is a tough podcast, Rube. We will eventually flip and we'll talk Eagles, Jalen Hurts, and the defense, and some injured players who might be coming back. But we have to start with the biggest news in the sports world, and it's tough to talk about. It was tough to watch last night. Damar Hamlin, the safety from the Buffalo Bills, cardiac arrest on the field, had to get CPR, was transported to the hospital, and we're short on updates outside of knowing that he's in critical condition. So it's one of those moments where it just reminds you that the product on the field is clearly not the most important thing. We've seen the outpouring of support from the NFL community, from the Eagles, and we'll attempt to talk about it as well as we can. It's tough, but maybe cathartic.
Yeah. Everything you said is so accurate. It was tough, and we're around the players every day, and you see them as people, not as a number. And I think for a lot of fans out there, it's just, oh, there's another injury. There's another guy getting carted up. But this was. I mean, I've been doing this since 1987. I've never seen anything like that. I remember once when Corey Simon, they actually brought an ambulance out on the practice field at Lehigh for Corey, and he ended up being fine. He ended up like being back at Lehigh that night. But it really, um, it's really sobering. Look, we love the sport, but it's a violent sport, and um, there's always the possibility that something like this could happen. And I know. I mean, they didn't cancel the game immediately. I know people were upset about that, but I think part of that is if you cancel the game immediately, now you have 50,000 people leaving the stadium and then an ambulance trying to get out. So they wanted to make sure everybody, the ambulance was out of the stadium and on the way to the hospital before they made an announcement. I think that's what that was all about. I know there was talk about the 5 minutes to warm up. That's not confirmed. I don't know where that came from. I know Troy Vincent from the league, our old friend Troy Vincent from the Eagles and Pennsbury High School said that never happened. So there's a lot we don't know. I mean, my main thing is just I hope that kid. What a great kid he sounds like. He's from my mom's hometown out in Western Pennsylvania, or where she was born. Um, Avante and Miles both played at Pitt and know him, and I can't imagine what they're going through, what his family's going through. Um, it's rough. I know his foundation. It's called the Chasing M's Foundation. It's a toy drive for kids in Pittsburgh. Um, it's over $4 million, and I know a lot of people like you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do, you feel helpless. One thing you can do is donate if you have the means, whether it's $1, $20, whatever, just to make a difference and to show some support for him and his family. It's Chasing M's Foundation. They have a GoFundMe. It was at like $20,000 yesterday. It's at 4.1 million. That's one small thing you can do. Otherwise, just if you pray. If you hope. If you meditate, whatever it is, to just hope this kid can live can recover and live a normal life as much as possible. We just don't know.
Yeah, and that's the toughest part is not knowing what's happening,
Yeah.
and it's I sometimes I feel conflicted, just like being in this world of the NFL
Yeah.
because it's such a great sport and it gives so many people so many things, but then it's like something like this happens and you're like, man, what are we even doing? Like, is this all worth it? And I think that's the emotion of it in the moment, because it's a sport that it does provide so much,
Yeah.
and I feel grateful that we're able to be a part of it in even a small way. But I realized that I I don't like the sport as much as I like what the sport means to people, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all the relationships that I've gained out of it, and then you realize what it means to players and like to what I mean. That was the most heartbreaking part of a lot of last night's coverage was just seeing the pain and in his teammates' faces and his opponents' faces because it means so much to them, uh, and those bonds mean so much. um, they're humans, and uh, I was struck by that seeing Josh Sweat on the field
Yeah.
Sunday, and luckily we knew relatively quickly that he was going to be okay. He was joking with his teammates. He gave the thumbs up leaving the field, but in that moment, it's like he just like, how do you even care about the game?
Yeah.
It's so sobering.
Now, I've known Sean McDermott since, I mean, he got here in '99 as just a real entry level. He was actually in the scouting department first, and he used to go into Jim Johnson's meetings. And Andy Reid said, would you rather be on the coaching staff than scouting? He's like, yeah, I think so. And they made him like a quality control guy, and he worked his way up, secondary coach, linebackers coach for a couple of years, became D coordinator, worked his way up, and I think he's one of the best head coaches. But he's one thing I've always known about Sean. Like every time I would see him, he used to run after practice at Lehigh. You know how hilly that area is. And I'd be walking to my car, and he'd be stretching before his run. He'd always ask how my parents were doing every time. How's your mom and dad doing? And I'd ask him how his family was. But he just always struck me as such a family guy. You could see it yesterday. There was no way he was going to let whatever the league said, what everyone said, that they were his guys were his family. And yeah, he's a local guy. He's from here. Went to Springfield High and right on Stenton Avenue there by 309 and I guess that's Springfield Township and Monco. And you could just tell how much he cared and how his priorities were right. And his priorities were taking care of his guys, whether that meant forfeiting the game. He was going to take care of his guys. And what a impossible situation for him. But they're fighting for number one seed, and you never know. I mean, who knows what the league is going to. I mean, we don't know if they're going to finish the game. Who knows? We don't know. But at that moment, all his energy, all his efforts were into making sure his guys were okay.
Yeah, and a ton of class shown by the Bengals staff, their coaching staff, their fans. Gosh, their fans were tremendous during that. It's something that you just don't even. You don't even think about that. That's the absolute biggest nightmare for any player or coach or fan or media member. It's, you want to cover a game. You don't want real life things to.
It's an
pop
escape.
up.
Yeah. I was amazed how quickly the doctors were out there in seconds.
Yeah,
probably saved his life.
And we've always heard that before. It's like if something terrible does happen, it's a good place for something, because the medical staff is so well trained, and they might have saved his life last night.
Yeah. There was I was reading an account of a fan who was at the game, a Bengals fan, and he said, there was Bengals fans and Bills fans just like arm in arm, and at that point, it didn't matter where you're from, who you're a fan of. I mean, everyone was together and sending all the good vibes they could down on the field. But I mean, the good news is that he's still with us, and I just keep hoping for some more good news. I mean, he's got a long road, whatever it is. Just hoping for the best. Seems like such a great guy. I was reading as much as I could about him last night, and man, awesome kid.
Yeah, grew up with a ton of adversity.
Sure did.
Just violence around, and he came through it. And I was reading, Tyler Dunn wrote a fantastic feature on him last year. I retweeted it if you want to find that. I think it's worth reading about it and learning about him, because I don't know him. I didn't know much about him before this incident, but you're right. He seems like the type of person you would want to get to know and meet, and so many people have been privileged to meet him. And I don't know how you feel. Like, I look at our jobs, and it's always such a privilege to meet people that you would never meet otherwise. That, I saw Malcolm Jenkins on the field before the game, and it's like, I got to know all these people, and he seems like someone that stands out to those who are around him.
One other thing that strikes me is T. Higgins. You send support out to him too, because that's a rough position. I mean, he's just playing the game. the best way he knows how, and he just happened to. It just happened,
In a
and
way, that's like part of the scariest thing about this is that it wasn't some unusual play.
right,
It was a routine play,
right,
and it kind of just shows you how fragile all this is.
yeah, yeah. So our thoughts go out to everybody. Um, you know, everybody up in Buffalo, everybody in Cincinnati, Damar's family, Miles and Avante, just great guys who are close to him.
Yeah, the Eagles on Tuesday were scheduled to have all their coordinators speak to reporters. They postponed that, pushed it back. Looks like most of the league is doing the same. I saw the Steelers had availability, which gave Mike Tomlin a chance to address reporters, and he had mentioned he's known excuse me, he's known him since he was 12. So
Really,
yeah, so I grew up in the area, so that makes sense.
and Shady knows him too. Shady, the Pitt thing.
Yeah,
Shady's close to all the Pitt guys.
Nick Sirianni was on WIP Tuesday morning, so he had a chance to speak on a little bit. I'll just read you a quick part of this. It just puts everything in perspective. You come to work, you have a loss you're really upset about, you're thinking about that, and then something like that happens at night. It just puts everything in perspective of how these players put their bodies on the line. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's tough, and it's it's at a certain point there will be football again, and not that we'll forget about this, but they'll play games again, and that feels weird right now, and it's going to feel weird in a few minutes when we talk about Jalen Hurts and we talk about the Eagles' offense and the defense, because there's really nothing further on my mind, but we'll try to give people an escape as much as we can.
yeah, and I'll never forget. I'll never forget that day up at Lehigh. They were on the far field, so the one close, like I guess it would be the southernmost field there, which they didn't use that much, but they're on that field when Corey. I don't remember what the injury was. Just remember seeing that ambulance come on the field.
Was that Corey Simon or was that Mike Patterson?
Well, Mike Patterson, he had the brain.
I was
ABM.
there for that. Okay.
Yeah, that was just as scary. But the Corey, for whatever reason, the Corey Simon one sticks with me. And yeah, Mike Patterson, and that probably saved his life because they found the brain ABM, I think it was, and he had surgery for that and came back and played. Good for him. And what a great guy Mike is. But Corey, I'll never forget. I was, they take him off in the ambulance and they went back to they went back to practicing like a minute later, and I'll never forget. Correll Buckhalter got the first rep, and they were live. They were live back then, and it was just he just ran like so hard into like three linebackers, and I'm like, I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can watch your teammate and your brother, but guys are trying to make the team, and they're just kind of they grow up with the game, and they only know one way to play, and it's probably the safest way to do it. But that really stuck with me.
Well, that's the issue last night. You can't play the game. You're putting other people in danger if you do that. But it's like it's the way they're wired.
Yeah.
It's like something happens, you just play. Yeah. Obviously, this is a much different case.
I give a lot of credit to Sean and Zach Taylor, who, I mean, they both decided, it sounds like mutually, there's still a lot we don't know, but it sounds like mutually they decided there's not going to be a game. Whatever anybody says, there's not going to be a football game tonight. And that's the only correct decision.
Yeah. And I was watching the game, and I kept with the ESPN coverage. I thought they did as good a job as they could have given the circumstances and the gravity of the situation. There were some people in the media who didn't handle it as well, and I'm not going to amplify that. But I thought the people on the broadcast
should lose jobs, though.
Yeah, but I thought the people on the broadcast did a good job, and that's an impossible situation. You become like a real journalist. This is like most of what we do is it's kind of fake journalism. We're covering a sport, but there are moments where the lines get blurred and you end up having to handle real life stuff. And Booger McFarland was great. So many, Lisa Salters was fantastic. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were great. So many of them. Scott Van Pelt later in the night was great. It's impossible, and people are tuning in because they're waiting and they're just hoping for a positive update. Unfortunately, we didn't have any of those last night, aside from a few that he was still with us in critical condition. And that's most of what Tuesday has been. Hopefully, by the time you guys listen to this, there will be good news. We just don't know.
Yeah. Hey, it's the Nissan Thrill of the Drive event, so gift yourself what you really want this holiday season and shop your local Nissan store or visit nissanusa.com today. Just like the holidays, these offers won't last.
Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone in a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Opioid addiction is a national public health crisis. The Someone You Know podcast from the Independence Blue Cross Foundation offers inspiring stories that challenge stigma, offer hope, and humanize the disease of addiction. Download the new season 3 of Someone You Know on all major podcast platforms. All right, Rube, let's try to shift gears a little bit here. You had a really good column on Monday, I believe, about Jalen Hurts, and we kind of anticipate him playing on Sunday. Will it solve all their problems? And I think there's probably a few different ways to look at that. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah, I don't either. And that's why it was kind of a weird column to write, because I didn't have any answers. I just kind of had the question of, Gardner Minshew was terrible, but he wasn't the only problem in that game. And, even going back to, Dallas, obviously, it was not a clean game in a lot of ways. And he wasn't, he played fine in that game. Even the Chicago game, kind of put an asterisk next to that one because of the conditions. You're just happy to get out with a win. But things haven't come easy for this team the last few weeks. I think that much is clear. And I just don't know if that's a symptom of something deeper or just some circumstances in each game. We won't know until we get out there. And my gut feeling is that, this team it's not a perfect team. There isn't a perfect team out there. I mean, you saw the 49ers with that incredible defense. Jarrett Stidham comes out in his first start and throws for 366 against them. So there's no perfect team out there. There's no team that doesn't have concerns and flaws and things that they're hoping they can improve going to the playoffs. I just don't know how much Jalen's return is going to – I think he does solve some problems just by his presence, obviously his ability and his quarterbacking play, but just the people around him seem to play at a higher level. Even on defense, how much of that is going to – how much of a factor that's going to be, I just don't know. I keep going back and forth on it.
I'm not, honestly. My answer is yes. He's going to solve a ton of problems. It was impossible for me to watch that game on Sunday and not think that multiple times throughout that game. He's not getting sacked 6 times.
True.
He's changing the numbers positively. He's keeping the offense on the field so the defense doesn't have to be out there as much. I just think he's such a difference maker, and Gardner could have played better. And if Gardner played better, I think that you don't notice the difference as much if he just plays at an average level and not as below average as he was. But I mean, Jalen just changes everything. There were moments where Gardner just looked so flustered in the pocket. And yeah, there are moments where we nitpick with Jalen Hurts, like, man, he left that clean pocket too early. But his ability to avoid pressure, avoid sacks, make plays when there's not a play to be made, it makes up for so much of the nitpicky stuff that we talk about when things are going well.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I guess there's that little seed of doubt inside my mind, but I think you're probably right.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's like the absence of Lane Johnson, or
Sure,
just the way the offense looks so out of sync?
Yeah, I think it, just Steichen getting away from running the ball early again, which is kind of getting to be a concern. Not having Lane, not having Avante, although.
So they didn't have Lane, they didn't have Avante, they still don't have CJ GJ. He's out for a little while. So you're right. I mean, they're missing more than Jalen Hurts. They're missing some other key players, and I think you put Lane right at the top of the list. And the concern with Lane is that when he's back, he's not going to be the Pro Bowl Lane Johnson that we're used to.
Yeah. Now, if Jalen's back, and I think he will be for the Giants, I mean, there's no question they win that game. I don't know what Daboll's going to do. I don't think it matters. I think they'll win either way.
It sounds like even if they start starters,
Yeah.
that they're not going to be in there long. And
Well, that's certainly what Vegas thinks.
yeah, 14-point spread. I
Yeah.
mean, that's pretty clear what they think. And even his comments, like if you're going to play your starters, you say, I'm going to play my starters.
Yeah.
You don't hedge the way he's hedging.
Yeah, and I think coaches like all the starters to go through the week preparing like they're going to just mentally, even if they know they're not starting or not playing beyond a series, kind of be in that mental, go through the whole week with that mental. That was Andy Reid's big thing. That's why he never told us, the starters are going to play. You go look out there and there's Coy. He played Coy as as the joke goes. But yeah, look, I think Jalen's presence solves a lot of. There's no question, solves a lot of issues. But there are some lingering questions, that you wonder about. But there's no doubt in my mind this team can win 2 home games. And if they get the number 1 seed, which I think they will, they can win 2 home games even with a couple flaws, even if Lane isn't 100% or isn't even playing.
And in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, I want to see Jalen. Like I want to see if his shoulder allows him to be the same player as before. You hope that's the case, but I guess we really don't know until we see it.
Our friend Elliot Shore Parks posed this question the other day. Would you rather have Jalen and the number 5 seed or Gardner and the number 1 seed?
Jeez.
Isn't that
Jalen and the 5?
Right? Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah, it's kind of
that's such a real thing.
It's not, but it's such an Elliot question. But yeah, I think if you have Jalen in the number 1 seed, that's probably the best of both worlds. But
and the odds are still that that's going to happen. I think 538 has them with a 94% chance of landing that. They could technically get it if they lose, but I mean that seems difficult. That seems unlikely. You would have to have both Cowboys and the Niners lose.
They're all playing at the same time now, which is good.
Which is why the NFL does that.
Yeah, and they should. I also, Jalen did not play well in the playoffs last year, the Tampa game, and this is big for him too. Because I mean, I'm not really talking about Sunday as much as what's next, and we'll have a couple weeks to talk about that, presuming they get the top seed. But I'm really curious how he's going to respond. Obviously, he's been a different player this year than last year.
That's not even on my mind.
It's on my mind. I want to see him
really.
Yeah, because that's what's next for this team. I mean,
he's played in big games before. I'm
not concerned. I'm curious.
Okay.
I guess I think he's going to play really well. I want to see what that looks like. I want to see what Jalen in the biggest game of his life looks like, and we'll see that soon. But yeah, you got to get past the Giants. If they lose to the Giants with their starters against the Giants backups, then the coaching watch is on.
I mean, then it's a disaster. They're probably going to Tampa.
Yeah.
In the wild card round for a second straight year.
Yeah.
And they're a better team than Tampa, but if you lose 3 going into the playoffs and you lose to the Giants backups, I mean, then then we're talking about one of the biggest meltdowns. It's really funny in a way. It's like either they go and they take care of business against the Giants and you think, okay, it was a little harder than you wanted it to be, but they're still in the same position that we thought they were going to be a month ago. Or we just witnessed an epic collapse, and I don't know if they make it out of the first round of playoffs.
That's fair.
It's such a either or.
Yeah. Football is a funny game, though. They could lose to the Giants and then win a couple road playoff games. It's just such a weird game. But I don't think we have to worry about that. If that happens, we'll talk about it Sunday night. But I'm pretty confident they'll be okay.
Yeah, I don't think I won't have to book a flight to Tampa again from the press box.
Although it's not the worst place to be in January.
It is not. I did enjoy my trip last January getting some sun, but I'd rather stay right here in Philly for that bye week and watch football in the wild card round.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. And I still think, do you view it that way? Obviously, it's not ideal that you have to play in this game because we saw Josh Sweat in the last game. If they would have taken care of business the week before, he probably isn't even playing. So you're opening yourself up to further risk of injury, and that's not ideal. But ultimately, if they win this game, they're still in the top spot, which is yes, we thought they'd be there just
Yeah.
a month ago.
Well, the way I look at it is they've earned this cushion.
Hmm.
You know, they've
That's fair.
they've earned a 3-game cushion, or 3 games to clinch this thing by going 13-1. So it's not like an accident or a fluke, or I mean, they've put themselves in a position where they could get the number 1 seed by beating the Cowboys or the Saints or the Giants. So I don't look at it like, oh, they're lucky they got this game. They've earned it. So they still have the best record in the league. They still have the best chance to win the Super Bowl, according to 538. There's 31 other teams, or 31 teams, that would love to be in their position.
Yeah. Defense. The Eagles' defense is, and I saw this on Monday and thought, well, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Technically, the number 1 defense in the league in terms of yards allowed after San Francisco had a really rough game this weekend.
Matt Collins ran it up a little bit on him.
He did. Eagles technically have the number 1 defense in the league. I don't think they're the best defense in the league, but they're a pretty good unit. And this conversation about Jonathan Gannon is exhausting. And you're probably more pro Gannon than me. I think it's safe to say. I think he's a solid coach. There are still things about the way he calls games that I don't like.
No, that's fair. There's things I don't like either.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I mean, they're the number 1 defense in the league for a reason.
Yeah.
And they're not just number 1. I mean, they're number 1 in sacks, with the 4th highest total ever. Even with the drought in takeaways, they're still, I have it here, they're still, I don't know. They're still among the top teams in takeaways. They're number 1 in yards allowed per play at 5.0, which is they passed Buffalo, which I think is a really good indicator because that kind of gets beyond a short field or a long field. They're just number 1 in yards per play allowed. They're number 1 pass defense. So there's a lot to like about this defense. I mean, it's funny. I got these people tweeting to me saying, "Oh yeah, they have 68 sacks, but it's not because of Gannon." Well, how do you know? Like if they had 68 sacks under Jim Johnson, oh, he's the greatest, and he was an incredible coach. But you can't just pick and choose when the coach matters, based on whether you like him or not.
I will say that I think there can be a little bit of both, and there can be like.
They got a lot of talent up front.
Talent can cover up some deficiencies, and I think we've seen that at times.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to boil it down to what percentage is this?
Sure.
What percentage is this? Because it's really impossible to tell. I think the way Gannon's coaching only works with the talent in the places they have it.
No question.
But they have it,
right.
So he's doing what works for this talent. So I'd be curious to see. Well, we kind of saw it last year when they didn't have this talent, what it looked like.
Right.
I think he struggled at times to cover up their deficiencies, but this year it's like they have all this talent, and I think that's something for owners to worry about if you're hiring him. It's like, well, what would he look like without these guys? Because we don't have these guys,
right?
And that's certainly fair. But for right here, right now, and the criticisms are valid about top quarterbacks, and it was disgusting to see Andy Dalton slice them apart
for one drive.
But an important drive.
It was terrible.
Yeah. So I see both sides of it, but he's not the worst coach ever.
No.
And sometimes he gets treated like he doesn't know what he's doing at all, and I think that's unfair.
Yeah, and there's not a team out there that hasn't had a game like they had in Dallas. There's not a team out there that hasn't allowed a drive like they allowed Sunday against the Saints, the first drive. Although somebody tweeted me and said, they give up points on every first drive. They've only allowed points on 4 first drives this year, which is like the 3rd lowest in the league. So there's a lot to like about the way they play, and they don't give up. For the most part, they don't give up many points. They don't give them many big plays. Although the last couple of weeks they have. It's weird. I mean, I think the thing that bothers me is that people get so personal about it. And I'm not saying he's a genius. I'm not saying he's the best defensive coach in the league. I'm not saying he'd be a great head coach. It's so out of whack. The criticisms are so out of whack with the product we see on the field. I think that's what bothers me. The number one thing, it's kind of funny. I still think the Niners have the best defense in the league. I think Buffalo is up there. Uh, Dallas is terrific, even though Gardner Minshew put up 27 points on them. And Denver's got a good defense. They just don't win any games. And the Saints defense is legit. Their linebackers are fast and physical. They're good. But Gannon's a good coach.
Fair. Yeah.
And I did all these comparisons between Jim Johnson's first 2 years and Gannon's first 2 years. If you want to, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I was just curious. They're pretty close.
Mm-hmm. I will say, though, if I'm looking at either side of the ball and which side I'm more confident in going into the playoffs, I'm more confident in the offense.
With Jalen.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think they can be stopped. I don't think this offense can be stopped when Jalen's healthy, and certainly when Lane's healthy. When they're at full strength, the defense, I think, they need some things they need to start creating more turnovers.
And you're going to see good quarterbacks
every week
in the playoffs, and that's obviously. And sometimes it's like, well, good quarterbacks are good, and they perform well, but the Eagles have definitely struggled more against higher class quarterbacks.
Yeah, like most teams.
But it feels.
Yeah, I guess. The Dak thing.
A little more egregious.
They can't beat Dak. That's a problem.
Well, they might see him. So.
They might see him.
Yeah. Last thing, we just want to update a few injuries. C.J. Gardner-Johnson sounds like might be trending toward a return. He was eligible last week, did not play. That would be a big boost.
Yeah.
Getting him back, and I don't know what they would do if he would play some. We've talked about this last week. If he would end up playing some nickel, or if he would stay at safety, I think they have some options there. Josiah turned in a better performance,
much better,
in that Saints game.
It's a really athletic interception at a big time. It was a big play. He's got the most interceptions on the team the last 8 weeks. He's got 2. Reed and Josh Sweat have 1. That's their interceptions over the last 8 games. They have 4 of them.
Yeah.
2 by Josiah Scott, 1 by Reed Blankenship, and 1 by Josh Sweat.
That's how you draw it up.
Just how they drew it up.
Well, we're seeing that defense, so it's like teams are just not throwing at Bradbury and Slay.
Right.
I wouldn't either.
There are sometimes, and mixed results, but
not much.
I think not much. I do think I would keep Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at safety.
Okay.
He was a Pro Bowler. He was leading the league. And he's still leading the league in interceptions. He was at that position. So certainly understand. It's kind of like the Dillard left tackle Mulata. Do you change 2 positions or 1?
Yeah, I think I would make it dependent on the opponent. You're playing the Cowboys and you got CeeDee Lamb.
It's fair.
I think then it's worth switching.
It's fair.
Okay. And the other one, it's we haven't thought about him in a while. Robert Quinn, but he is eligible to return in Week 18, and we haven't thought about him. The pass rush has been so good, but now with some uncertainty about Josh Sweat, who looks like he's going to make a full recovery. He says he's going to play again this year. Don't know when that'll be exactly, but you might need Robert Quinn all of a sudden. And look, I think expectations are going to be low whenever he comes back, but you never know.
If he gets 10 sacks the last 2 weeks, now they have 5 guys with double digits.
Well, he'd have to do it in 1 week, which would be real
1
tough.
week. Yeah, you're right. Fletcher can get 3. They have. Mm-hmm. He's got 7. They have 5 guys with seven sacks or more.
It's pretty crazy.
That's crazy. But Quinn, I wouldn't expect a whole lot. But it's not a position they have a lot of depth. If it's him or Matt Leo, I guess you got to go with the old vet.
Yeah, and look, I thought he'd offer something when they made the trade.
Oh, sure. Yeah, me too.
So I know we're pretty far removed from that, but if you get anything out of them, it'll be kind of a bonus at this point.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I wouldn't expect it, though.
Yeah.
Based on what I saw.
That's probably fair. I did want to give an update since we've been doing this. The NFL announced that they will not be playing the remainder of that Bills-Bengals game this week. No changes for Week 18 yet. Just a little update there. I think that's probably the right decision. Tough to go back on the football field.
Yeah, agree.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Again, our thoughts and prayers with Damar Hamlin, his family, his friends, his teammates, everyone in the NFL who's dealing with this right now. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan live here at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Take care, everyone.